I've been on the commission, boy, 5 years? 7? Are you 7? No way.
Is
I
that
don't
an
even-
elected position? Or
Elected by the county parties. I was a year before you. Yeah, so we come up in odd years in January.
Oh,
So I
okay.
came up for election back in January this year.
Yeah, oh, I remember that.
And then it's a 2-year deal. Yeah, so it's an interesting deal. Yeah, we get to appoint one.
So you get to face the music tonight. The flag. Woo. Okay. Yeah. It's so nice to meet you, sir.
My pleasure.
Nice to see you.
That's our best. Yes.
I would say so, and that work?
Sure.
Well, I mean, it does say this. It does, but probably. Are we gonna sit down? Oh,
How much is it?
He says we're a very seriously, are you getting the ends? That's what I was thinking.
Is everybody here? Good. I know I am.
No, I have a, there's a here, and I have strings.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah. Whatever.
All my questions are easy.
So that's where we should.
Meeting will come to order, and the prayer and pledge will be led by J.P. Harvey Bowman.
Once I get there. Please stand. Lord, we come before you tonight, and we ask you for wisdom. We know the scripture says, asking you shall receive. And Lord, I'm asking you to provide us wisdom and discernment tonight above and beyond our capabilities. We've got a lot of complex issues to deal with, and God just asks you to give us a clear vision to see what would be the appropriate thing to do for Washington County. We just thank you for all your blessings and ask us to see us through this meeting and help us to accomplish the goals we need to get done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda? Do I hear a motion to
Madam Chair,
adopt
I
the
move to
agenda?
adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second? Thank you. We have a motion to adopt and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The agenda has been adopted. All right. Our first person, our people on the, with their budgets tonight are the Election Commission. Jennifer Price.
I guess you have to squeeze in. Good evening. I am Renee Oschlager, current chairman of the Washington County Election Commission. My colleagues are Commissioner Max Deichler and Commissioner Bill Ackerman. We're also joined by Jennifer Price, our executive director in the election office.
Excuse me just a minute. We're on page 417.
417, okay. Before we get into the budget, I thought it would be helpful for newer members of the Quorum Court to understand some foundational information about the Election Commission and its operation. I'll be brief. Election commissions are mandated by the Arkansas Constitution. Election commissioners, 3 in number for each county, are not, in the strictest sense, employees of the county. While election commissioners receive compensation through the county treasury, commissioners serve at the pleasure of the political parties. As commissioners, our duties are regulated by constitutional statute as well as rules promulgated by the Secretary of State's office and the State Board of Election Commissioners. Even though county governments fund their election commissions, neither the county judge, JPs individually, nor the county quorum court as a whole has specific authority to direct or control election commission operations. Put simply, the election commission fulfills its constitutional mandate by conducting elections regularly, efficiently, fairly, and accurately, and with impartiality. This requires the Election Commission of necessity to remain autonomous. In my experience, dating back more than a decade, Washington County's Election Commission has cultivated a respectful and harmonious relationship with the Washington County Quorum Court. Our goal is to see that that cooperative relationship continues. Now, as regards the Election Commission budget, I'm told questions were raised about the county's job description for election coordinator. There are a couple positions within the county clerk's office who hold election coordinator jobs. Without minimizing the importance of those county clerk positions, they are not comparable to the Election Commission election coordinator. In aspects both administrative and operational, the Election Commission position is a department-level position, comparable to other department-level positions within the courthouse, except oversight for this particular department lies exclusively with the Election Commission. The Election Commission is mandated to conduct elections start to finish. Under our direction and oversight, Jennifer Price ensures every detail is accomplished. I believe my colleagues at this table will concur. Jennifer is invaluable in our county, as well as for other counties across the state who rely on her knowledge and expertise throughout the year, not just at election times. In recognition of her outstanding service and expanded role within our election office, The Election Commission in 2016 approved honoring her with the new title of Executive Director. Election commissions are meant to be separate and distinct. Jennifer Price, in her role as Executive Director of Elections, fills a unique position within our election department. As Washington County grows and our elections take on added complexity, her duties will continue to expand. If you require additional explanations, we're here to answer your questions. If not, we're ready to proceed to the discussion of our budget. Thank you.
Are there any questions? If not, let's move on.
Okay. Can you hear me? Everyone? Okay. So we have presented a budget based on a presidential election year. So if you are reviewing our budget, please ignore 2019. Don't compare our numbers to that, but look more at what we spent in 2018. That would be a more comparable year for our budget. The increases occur because we will have a primary election and, of course, a presidential general election year. And then we have to anticipate, certain runoff elections that we don't know that we'll have, and other special elections that could come up through the year. So when we build our budget, we build it based on some knowns, but also some unknowns. We do have a $1 increase in our budget for our poll workers, based on the fact that our poll workers are paid at $10.30 an hour. In 2021, that will go up to $11 an hour required state minimum. So we would like to take our poll workers up to $11.30 an hour for 2020. And so we also have in here all of our different line items, and I'm not sure exactly what information you want. If you want me to expand on the poll worker raise first, and then we can get into the other parts, I'm more than happy to do that. So based on what we spent in 2020 or in 2018, we're asking for the $1 raise for our poll workers. The base poll or pay for the Washington County for a janitorial position, which is the lowest paid position in the county, starts at $11.08. And we pay our poll workers $10.30 an hour. So part of the reason we've asked for that increase is to come up to the $11.30, is to come up to the $11 that will be required in 2021, and then also to be more in line with what a starting position is in the county at $11.08. So we've included that in our budget as well. We've also included a 3% raise for our part-time staff, but that 3% raise is based on 2019. So when our budget was presented in 2019, it did not include a 3% raise for our staff, which is part-time, which means that they did not get the automatic 3% raise that every other full-time employee
Let me ask
received.
this question. Are the raises in your total amount
Yes, they are.
of $854,858?
Yes.
That's in there. Now, I have a question for Mr. Worthen. When I asked for you to cut out all increases in salaries, did you cut the election commission or did you leave it like it is?
I didn't know the raises were in there, so
Oh, so they're not, okay. They're not in that cut then, okay.
they're part-time positions, so they weren't listed as positions.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that that money was not part of that reduction or increase of the 3 million, the 1.4 million that I'm trying to work on to get us to the 3 million carryover. So that money's not in there, which is good. Okay, other questions?
It is in there.
Yeah, it's in there, yes. It's in their budget, yes. It was not taken out.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
point of clarification, just for me to understand. So the election
Poll
workers'
workers.
raises are included in your total sum. They were not
They were not reduced.
reduced.
Yes.
Okay.
That was.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that
Okay,
that was,
thank you.
I thought it was that way, but I was not sure. Harvey, J.P. Bowman?
Do I look like I got a question on my mind?
Yes? I thought you had your hand up like this.
I keep wondering about the number of days you have early voting. I felt like for some time that was probably longer than it needed to be. What's your plans for this year, for 2020 elections?
So actually, early voting serves a very practical purpose for Washington County. We rely on the 60% voter turnout during early vote to accommodate the number of voters that would show up at the polls on election day. So we're anticipating 35,000 voters to show up on election day. If I don't have the 2 weeks of early voting and the 60% voter turnout, I do not have enough voting equipment to accommodate the number of voters that would have to vote at the polls on election day. The way I look at my numbers, I need one express vote, which is the ballot marking device, for every 100 voters. So if I get 35,000 voters who show up on election day, and that's based on a 65% voter turnout, with 60% of those voting early and 40% showing up on election day, I am short already 20 pieces of voting equipment. So right now or actually 30. Right now I have 321 pieces of voting equipment. At needing 350, I'm already short. So that early voting actually serves a huge purpose in accommodating the voters and keeping the line short on election day. I've actually budgeted in this budget one more early vote site to take us to 9 early vote sites. We have not determined where that location would be, but that will only help us on election day. We saw the benefits of that with West Fork and Elkins in 2018, where the lines were extremely long in 2016 because I didn't have enough voting equipment, and that actually benefited all of those areas where we opened up early voting.
Okay. Well, I
Okay.
know people tend to postpone their vote and postpone it, and I wonder about your first week and second week of that early voting. What kind of turnout? You said you get a total of 60%?
A total of 60% of all the votes cast are cast during early voting, and that's the number we need to keep pushing for, because even though the overall voter turnout may not change, 2016, 2018, 2020, it'll run about 65%, the total number of registered voters in Washington County will increase, so the actual number of votes cast continues to go up.
Yep.
So that early voting is very important. Even the first week of early voting, even though the numbers are a little bit lower, it still serves a very good purpose.
Well, I know every time my wife and I go in to vote, it's always a very, very quiet place on those early weeks. And I didn't know what you might do to get people out earlier or whatever, or cut it to 1 week or whatever that would pick up the rate of voting.
We need the full 2 weeks, just because some of the sites, yes, are a little slower. But if you ever come here to the quorum courtroom or to the rodeo grounds, it's busy all day long. And the idea is in Prairie Grove, West Fork, Elkins, those areas is to help those locations get as many people to early vote, because we have it at their locations. We need consistency. And so by having it open the full 2 weeks, it's easy for us to tell the voters, hey, early voting, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, at all the locations. If we have to say, well, this place is open this week, this place is open this week, we lose the consistency and we lose the voters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you give us an estimate of how much the state will reimburse us for 2020?
Yes. So, let me flip to my page. So in 2018, the state reimbursed $118,000 for the primary election, and that was total cost. And so we can expect to actually get more back this year, even with the dollar raise for our poll workers. The state will raise what they're actually reimbursing for poll workers. So in 2018, the county ended up paying $1.80 for every hour the poll workers worked. But even with the dollar increase and with the state increasing what they reimburse, the county would be responsible for $1.30 versus $1.50 from 2018. So overall, like I said, our reimbursement from the state is $118,000 for the primary.
So,
So you could look at, it could be $120,000, $130,000 based on the higher rate of what they will reimburse us for.
we can expect maybe a third of the total to be reimbursed from the state?
Yes, so overall, in 2016, we received about 46% of our budget that was, we received back from billing to the state and the cities. In 2018, it was about 36%. So we should vary between 37 and 40% back of the budget that you approve should come back to us by billing the city and the state.
Okay, so we don't have to, fund this completely by ourselves. We do get reimbursed, so that $515,000 is, can be cut down some. Okay, are there any other questions? Yes,
Thank you.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving forward in the future, what I would really like is to show that what the state did reimburse the county for on, even though this is a budget, it's an expense, it's always good to show this is how much, and it keeps it on one page. You don't have to
Yes.
flip around looking for it. So moving forward, whoever prepares our budget, I'd like that information, even past years, to show what actual numbers are and what our liabilities are when it comes to paying for this.
The letter that I presented had that breakdown for you for 2014, 16, and 18 as well. But yes, I can obviously start including
I
that.
think it would help. And my apologies, I picked up last year's budget book, and I don't have this year's budget book.
Oh, no.
so I apologize. But thank you.
Okay, J.P. Deakins?
Thank you for coming tonight. So I want to make this real clear for me, dumb it down for me. Line item 1002, you say if we keep it in context, we're going to compare to 2018, there's like a $120,000 increase in that. That is the increased, the salaries, the dollar wage increase?
It is, but it's not just the dollar raise. So that includes a primary runoff, because right now we don't know. That includes the dollar raise for our poll workers. It includes an unknown general election runoff, because this year both Springdale and Fayetteville will have mayors up for election, which means that if we have a runoff election for those two cities, I have to open up every polling location versus just a simple ward election where I could just open up a few polling locations. So based on the type of runoffs we might anticipate is how I build in that extra money. So for instance, in 2018, our runoff was in 2 wards in the city of Fayetteville and then one other smaller city. So I didn't have to open as many polling locations.
Wonderful. Can you give me some background on 2 line items in this budget?
Sure.
Specifically, if we look down at 3,074, contract overage,
Yes.
what makes up that expense?
So that is actually all the printing that we have to do. So we are required to print 2 sample ballots of every ballot face that we have. So for a primary election, that's 151 ballot faces times 3 times 46 polling locations times 2. So, so the number is quite large. So we're required by law to publish two sample ballots 2 sets of ordinances for any ordinance that's on the ballot, plus all the other required postings. So we also do new training manuals for every election, or for every other election year, with updated information. And so most of that is just printing costs we're required to print for the elections.
Got you, thank you. One more, 3102.
Yes.
The very bottom one, software support maintenance agreement.
So I actually can give you $20,000 back on that one. So.
That's very welcome news.
So in the past, the Secretary of State's office has paid for our license for our program. We program our own ballots in-house, and the state has always picked up that license for us. In 2020, the state came to us and said, you're going to have to pay for that license. And so that's why I had the increase in there. However, after I had submitted this budget, I went back to the state, because the state, we were also having to pay for the maintenance and software costs for the voting equipment that the county purchased in 2016. But the state was picking that up for all the other counties in the state where they did the co-purchase. And so I asked the state, if I'm paying my PYO fees, I only feel that the state should pick up the 2016 cost of the maintenance that the county purchased. And so that's what they will do. So we will actually submit the maintenance costs to the state, but we will pay the PYO license. So it kind of comes out.
So that
even.
budgeted amount will come back down to right around what 2018 was?
Yes, yes, it will.
I appreciate your tenacity, and I want you to browbeat the state for every dollar
Yes.
you can ever get out of them.
I did, because after I found out what the state was doing and from other counties, I went back to the state and asked the state for that trade.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question. I know that sometimes the state will not fund certain departments or positions here in Washington County because they know that we, the county, will fund it. Are we, Washington County, funding certain things here in your budget that other counties are, that the state is paying for other counties?
No, the only part that we bill to the state would be the primary. There are certain parts of the election when we do the primary that the state will not reimburse us for, but they treat every county exactly the same way. So the maintenance fees, that was the only part where I felt like I needed to ask the state to look at how they were handling other counties and handle Washington County the same way. But those two areas were the only two.
That's good to know. Thank you, Ms. Price. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let me ask you this question. If we do not open a new polling place during early voting, how much money would that save?
So the additional early vote site would save about $30,000 to $36,000. It would be a smaller site that we would open, but we also get to bill the state for the poll worker cost for the primary. They don't pay all of it, but they would pay a large percentage of it. For the general election, the county would only be responsible for half of that cost, and we bill the other half out to the cities. So, for instance, if this one early vote site costs for the general election $16,000, the cities will pay $8,000 of it, and the county would pay $8,000. So, when I build it in, yes, it's $36,000, but when you break it down, what the county actually would be responsible for is not that total $36,000.
Okay, any discussion? Jennifer. Jenkins. J.P. Jenkins. I can't.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I wish we had name tags.
Thank you for, right here. Thank you for being here tonight. Can you tell us some of the proposed sites you're looking at for the extra location?
So we haven't really had a formal discussion on that, but just some of the locations that,
I was gonna say, with Andrea, JP Jenkins, we have not. Sure. You know, I hate to jump in and say this, but frankly, the Election Commission hasn't considered it, and that's a decision that the Election Commission will make, but we have not discussed proposed sites. And the commissioners have to agree, you might know, it's a unanimous decision between the three of us as commissioners. So there's a possibility we don't even have an early vote site, but this would give us the opportunity to open an additional site if the commission can agree on it. But we have not discussed it, so.
So the funding is in the budget for an additional site. You just have not had that discussion.
We have not had it yet.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
we have not looked at it.
JP Lemming?
Items 3071 and 3073, you said in 2016 we purchased that, or are we leasing and renting that?
so 3071, that is the truck rental for.
Machinery and equipment, okay.
You're talking about 3071 machinery and equipment. So that actually, we have to rent Penske trucks to deliver all of our voting equipment. So that complete line item is totally billable. So we bill all of that out to the different cities and to the county, and the county would pay half of what we spent for the general election. But for the primary election, 100% of that is paid by the state. And then, did you say 3073?
So one's truck rental, and is the other one, the way I looked at it, it may be voting equipment.
No, 3073 is our copiers.
Okay, so that's different equipment. Thank you.
Yes.
JP Pond?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have another question. I do have a couple of comments to make. I caught it. 60% of the voters are voting during early voting.
Mm-hmm.
And, on top of that, I'm thinking, we don't want to do anything to discourage early voters. And we do need to kind of stay on top of it and do something to encourage them. And I don't mean to make this a thing where we're overlooking a $1 pay raise for some part-time help that didn't get any raise the last couple of years. Besides that, we just, we need to do whatever we can, and I'm kind of glad that we don't know where that new site's going to be. I don't think that should make a difference on anybody's, how they vote, where the new voting site would be. I just think it makes us more impartial not to know and leave it to the discretion of this commission.
Well, this is their
Sure.
responsibility, so,
Sure.
we don't
And
have it.
I'm not going to get torqued off if I later on find out, well, that's over. I don't care where it is. We need to, I appreciate y'all doing whatever you can to encourage more voters, even if it is the early votes, seeing as how that's where 60% of the people vote. Thank you.
Okay. JP Jenkins?
Not Jennifer. Thank you. I just wanted to be clear. I was just purely curious about a location that really makes no difference to me. I was just curious. Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
One more comment about what JP over here discussed a moment ago, and that was talking about the early vote count and 2 weeks, et cetera, to get that done. We learned in 16, when we first got our new equipment, that we didn't get enough equipment at that time to be able to handle the whole load or a vast majority of the load of voters on vote day. We revved up a campaign to get early vote out, And you're seeing the difference now that's happening here. Because we didn't have the equipment and we had long lines. Several of you JPs were here when we had the long lines that year. People were disgusted with that. The worst thing we can do is make it difficult for a voter to vote. And we're trying very hard not to do that. Therefore, the 2 weeks is paramount for us, if you will. And we need to work on that early vote constantly.
Right, we need to
That's a
encourage
lifeblood.
people to get out and vote early because
And we're short of equipment and we're becoming more short of personnel all the time. We're 70 volunteers short right now for our next election.
And there was another point I really wanted to make that, you know, these poll workers are trained. They have training sessions for these poll workers. They just don't walk in on the day of the election and go to work. There is training, and y'all are to be commended for that.
Well, our poll worker rolls right now show us that from the age of 61 and over, 290 of our people fit in that category. You'd be amazed at the ones that are over 70. So we have difficulty in filling those roles. We need people who are a little more electronically inclined, so to speak. We had 2 people on our rolls that are 21 to 24.
We had 3 people of the ages 18 to 24 of all of our 378 poll workers.
So we're struggling every day to keep our poll
Poll
workers where they need to be. We need to compensate them, and we need to be able to train them, and we need the equipment there for them so that the voter gets the service he needs out of where he or she needs out of Washington County. And we're doing a good job. Don't misunderstand me. The public's very pleased with what's going on right now, and I think most of you folks are.
Yes. Okay, J.P. Ecke?
Oh, there it goes. Thank you, Sam. JP, I do have a question. You said you have shortage of poll workers to work. Their training would be for how long?
So for one thing, in 2016, between 2016 and 2018, I lost 79 poll workers. I wasn't able to replace 79 poll workers, so we were short in 2018. In 2020, we'll probably be short again. Our poll workers we bring the poll workers in initially for a 3-hour training session that's mandated by the state. They're required before every primary to attend that training. But we also do what's called a refresher training course for 2 hours where we set up the voting equipment so the poll workers can come back and do the opening and closing procedures at their own pace with us there to answer any questions. And then for supervisors, and I wish JP Cunningham was here, she could attest to this, we bring our supervisors in for a special training session because there are a lot of complicated different things that the poll workers have to do as far as provisional ballots, assisting voter forms, all of those different things. And so altogether, our poll workers receive between 5 and 7 hours of training.
Would you do me the favor and send all of us on the court just, what the criteria is for a poll worker, the requirements and the expected hours and locations, because we have a group of young college students that are politically minded, nonpartisan, that are looking to get experience in volunteer work. So if you could send that to all of us, JP, so we could have it, because I'm sure we all know young people that would like to add this to their community service resume. So would you do that for me? I don't want to take any more of everybody's time.
No, I will absolutely. I also want to say, too, that we have a new way to get to the county's to our part of our website, which is Vote Washco. So it's really easy for the voters to remember and to pass that information along. If they just go to Vote Washco, there's a tab.com. There is a tab on there on how to sign up to be a poll worker and the link to fill out the application on that page as well, but I will be more than
Okay.
happy to send
Or just
that.
send us a link,
Mhm.
that would be good,
Yes.
just so that way we can remember.
Madam
Thank
Chairman,
you.
can I say one more thing? You asked about the number of poll workers that we have. We are mandated by the state for every location that we open in the county, a minimum of 4. So this is also part of the dynamic. If we can't get a minimum of 4 at a location, then we don't have any choice but to eliminate that location and pour those voters to some other place. So it's a significant issue when we've lost 70 poll workers since, what did you say, 2016? Yeah.
Well, you've done a really good job presenting the budget, and I think that people that didn't know what the line items have asked about those line items. Do I have a motion that we pass this budget?
Motion to pass.
Second? All right, we have a motion to pass this budget. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, vote, wash, coat, works, right? It's easy.
We're trying to make it easy for everybody.
$438, $439 for the sheriff. Come on down.
I think we're gonna have to have a circle of chairs as well, but I'll let them bring
Okay.
them up.
Get everybody
Why
up
don't you
there.
Come on.
Come on.
I think what Jay and I are gonna do is maybe just cover a couple of
Okay. I just want to make one statement, and the court, if they want to do this differently, okay. But we have set aside a day to look at salary increases and addition of personnel of those that we're going to do, and that is November 12th.
November?
Well, that's what I put down there. We'll be finished with everything by then. We'll do the budget controls, if we do a salary increase, and how many positions we're gonna fill.
All in November?
Yes,
No, okay,
before Thanksgiving.
okay,
We
That'd be
should
great.
have this budget finished by Thanksgiving.
okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what Jay and I are going to do to kick this thing off is just discuss a few things in overall philosophy, maybe as an educational process about our budget, and then what we're going to do is have other folks come up and be very specific in their areas of management for their budgets to answer very specific questions that I'm sure you all have. I think one of the things that I'd like to kind of kick out there, mainly for the new folks, there's always been this idea, and I know that we are the elephant in the room, you know, in the whole county budget. We've got one of the largest budgets. We've got over half the county employees at the sheriff's office, for those of you that didn't know that. But there's also been a myth or a thought that we haven't lived within our budget. And it's all about because we don't work within the quarter-cent sales tax, which for those of you who don't know, it's 10 million, 10.5 million. It seems to be growing a little bit. But our overall budget on the detention side is over $16 million. And without our contracts that we'll talk about tonight, without growth in our funds, we would be over budget. But the court has always seen fit to look at our overall presentation, and for at least the last, since 2013, there's been a 1.8 infusion, a 1.3, where are we at, Jay? I think 13, there was a $2.7 million infusion. We have never spent all of that money that has been dedicated to our budget, okay? I just want to make sure you understand that even though every year we say, well, the sheriff's draining the budget again, here's another 1.5 million down the tubes. For instance, last year, there was 1.2 million infusion at the start of the year to help cover our budget. There was actually $410,000 out of general fund used toward our budget. Now, it may be confusing, so that means 800,000 plus went back into general fund, but we spent 99% of our budget. Thank God for the increased tax, the increased number of federal inmates, the increased number of state, that kind of thing, if you get my drift. There's that, we use all of that to cover that big gap between the 10.5 million and the $16 million that we find ourselves at, okay? I just wanted to clarify that because I think some of y'all have heard that our budget's out of control, that we're not spending within our limits. You know that the majority of the spending on the detention side, at least, is driven by the number of detainees that we have in that place. We've created a medical budget now that we didn't have 15 years ago. You know, that we have a doctor and all of his staff that control that. But it costs money, and those rates go up every year. The cost of food, just by virtue of how many people are in jail, those costs go up every year. So, and then fuel costs and all that, and we'll be talking about that a little bit. Another thing that comes out almost every budget year is, well, we need to, across the board, all offices we need a 2% cut in your budgets. Come in with a 2% cut. Well, we just need to remember that the majority of the money in all of our budgets is personnel. The jail's less than on the enforcement side. The jail's, I think, right at 75%, the jail is. About 75% employee costs, but then you got to throw in the medical contract, and you got to throw in the food contract, and you got to throw in all those things, and it kind of shrinks back up to where we are on the enforcement side, whereas about 87%, I think, about 87.5% are for personnel costs, okay? So then we have a very small percentage then. If it's 87% on the enforcement side, that leaves us with 13% that you guys are actually talking about if you were to come out and say that, all right? I think a lot of times when new people come on, they go, well, gosh, if the sheriff would cut 2% off of 16 million, hey, we'd be cutting a fat hog, but it's unrealistic overall because we have set and fixed costs that we have no control over, okay? Jay, what do we need to throw out before we throw the other guys to the wolves?
Well, as you said, we understand we're the elephant in the room. We also understand that the lion's share of the county budget that y'all are going to appropriate during this budget cycle the lion's share goes to criminal justice purposes for the most part. You know, you figure us, you got JDC, you got the prosecutor, public defender, half of what Kyle, maybe more half what Kyle does is criminal justice. So criminal justice is as you all have figured out, the biggest thing the county does. We know we're the biggest part of that criminal justice pie, so we understand that, and we're going to work hard to stay within what is allocated. I told the sheriff earlier, we were talking about the volatility of the fuel market, and if we have a big thing over in the Middle East, that gas is going to go up 50 cents a gallon in 2 or 3 days. We don't know that. We talked about the GM strike, and we may, we've got money budgeted for capital. We may not even get to get cars. Tahoe's is our car of preference, so with the GM strike, they may not even build cars in 20. So we don't, I said the most difficult part of forecasting this budget for me is trying to figure out the difference between forecasting that budget and indigestion. That's the hardest part for me. So it's tough trying to come up with realistic numbers and staying on task, and you all know all that. You see this stuff in your daily work too. So, but I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
We've got some experts back here on their subjects, and we're going to let them come up and discuss intimately about their budgets.
And then we can come back.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yes, Ann.
Can I just make one comment, because sometimes people don't realize this. the enforcement part of the sheriff's department has always come out of the general fund. I mean, that's where he gets his money. And then we have the jail over here as part, and we do have that quarter-cent sales tax that creates, as he said, somewhere around $10–11 million, and that budget's somewhere around $16 million. But I don't know if, I always kind of like to separate those. And I know it's the elephant in the room, but we've got to tame him down a little bit, I guess is what I want to say. And I hope we can give you what you need to function. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing to realize, and you know, we've started a work group to try and figure out this jail thing, and one of the things I really put out to that group is I don't even want to be, I'll be in the room to listen or whatever, but I don't want to be giving direction. I want that work group to work, because here's the deal, you guys. What I tell them is it's your jail. It's not my jail. I've been elected to help run the jail and hire the right people to run the jail. But that's what I would just tell you. This is your enforcement branch. This is your people. These are the people that are serving you every day. This is your jail, all right? So whenever I come up and say, we got to have this, it's not that Tim wants anything. It's that we have to have based on history, based on need. Okay, so that's when I present a budget, it's based on need. And I just wanted to make sure that you know that we work diligently every day to stay within our budget. The premise of the sheriff's office under this administration has been to always do the right thing, to do it for the right reasons and do it without exception. So I think you can feel confident that what we present you are based on needs only, not on desires or wants, okay? Okay, anything?
No, sir, no.
Okay, other than wishing Eva happy birthday. I always remember Eva's birthday because my daughter Carly, it's her birthday today as well. She's turned 26. You're probably a year or two older, Paul, I imagine.
I moved it past the budget, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Did I mention how smart you are, how good looking you are? Okay. So having said all that, what we'd like to do first, I think you have enforcement, or it says sheriff's budget on the front. That's our enforcement arm of our budget. I'd like to introduce to you Major Rick Hoyt, who is over that process. Just so you remember, I'm elected, and then our organizational chart falls off of that. Jay is directly under me, who has the operational responsibility for the whole program, shoulder to shoulder with me, and then it drops down next with two majors. So I'm introducing now to you Major Hoyt, who's in charge of our operational end, and he will bring with him Captain Ty Augustine, who is in charge of our actual enforcement side, patrol, CID, things of that nature, and Josh McConnell, who is a captain over our administrative end of things, okay, on the enforcement budget. So thank you for your attention, and I know you're going to be well informed here in just a moment.
Good evening. I'm Major Rick Hoyt with the Sheriff's Office. If my math is correct, I think there's 7 new faces up here tonight that weren't not here. They might have been in the audience, but they weren't in office at this time last year when we were going through the budget process. The sheriff gave you a little clarification on how our agency is split up, but just to go even further, I am in charge of the general fund portion of the sheriff's budget, okay? The budgets you have before you that have the number 0400 in the middle, you know, it starts out with 1,000, some of them do, the big one does, and then it says 0400. Those are the budgets that I'm in charge of. Like the sheriff said, our agency is split in 2 distinct sections. We have the detention side, and that's Major Denzer, whom you've seen a lot, and we have the enforcement side. That's my responsibility, and you see me occasionally up here. I don't have to come to the quorum court that often, but I was here just recently asking for some money to be moved around and some things like that. A little bit about my background. I've got 45 years in law enforcement now. I served over 28 years at the city of Fayetteville. When I left there, I was chief of police. I next came to the county, but I left briefly and went to the city of Springdale and served as their interim chief of police while they went through a transition period. I did not want to stay there because I didn't want to have to move and do those things, and I continued my employment with Washington County. I now, in another 3 months, will have 15 years of experience for the Washington County Sheriff's Office, so 45 years in total. This is Captain Ty Augustine, and this is Captain Josh McConnell, and the sheriff told you what their sections are that they're in charge of. What I want to report to you tonight, first of all, if you go to page 4-38, which is our overall budget page in the general fund, I think there's some pretty important numbers down at the bottom right. And those numbers are, it shows a reduction. We reduced our budget overall $171,000, almost 2% overall, and 21% in non-personnel services. How in the world did we do that? Well, with my assistants, able-bodied and sharp pencils, we went through the budget the best we could. We also cut our capital request quite a bit, and you'll see that we're only asking for 3 vehicles, and there's a narrative on page 5-7 and 5-8 that explains that we're only asking for 3 vehicles. Also, it should be important to note that we have actually still achieving a savings, and we are increasing our head count over on the enforcement side. Now, before you get too excited, we're not adding a new body. We are taking a body from the detention side, moving that person over to the enforcement side. Why? Because that person is a training sergeant. We already have another training sergeant in enforcement. They are paid differently. They are supervised by Captain McConnell for the sake of just organizational needs. They need to be both on the enforcement side. So we moved $55,000 worth of salary over into the enforcement budget and still achieved the reductions that I'm talking about. I would like to go to 5.7 and just hit it very briefly because I know you'll have other questions, but we're asking for 2 Chevrolet Tahoes, 2-wheel drive police packages for next year. And that's if we can get them. We've heard from Chevrolet that they might not even be producing these vehicles next year, so we don't know what we're going to do. We may have to buy something used, or maybe there'll be something left over from a state bid or something that's, that's new but sitting on a lot. So we don't know what we're going to do because we don't control the car manufacturers. We're also asking for a plain vehicle, which is it's called a special service utility vehicle, a 4-wheel drive, to replace a vehicle that I checked the mileage of that vehicle today, and it's got over 165,000 miles, and it's in our CID section. Now, several years ago, when Ford started doing away with the Crown Victoria police sedans, we came to the Quorum Court and asked to go to the Tahoe platform, which was kind of a major change. But it has proven to be very successful. Back in the days that we had the Crown Victoria, we drove those vehicles between 80 and 90,000 miles before they were turned out to pasture or sold or traded in or put in a less demanding role. What we told the Quorum Court at that time is we believed we could get more mileage without having to replace the Tahoes as often as a Crown Victoria because they are on a truck chassis. Everything is built heavier. And that's what we have done. And in fact, we have gone this year, and projecting for next year, we're taking that up to 130,000 now. That's what we're using as our benchmark to consider. We want that vehicle to stay in active patrol. Now, some of you may say, well, 130,000, that's not very many miles. Well, let me tell you, get out on some of these county roads and go up and down them, get in and out of your car, 25 times a day, zip your window up and down a bunch of times, and I'm telling you, we put more, there's more life used up in our vehicles at 130,000 than one you might have at 200,000 miles, okay? Opening the doors, the hinges wear out, there's just, things get loosey-goosey, all right? And that's not what we want our patrol officers driving around in. So that's the capital part. Now, I would like to go over on page 5.9, 5.10. You should have a budget explanation. That's something we do every year that just, to us, explains some of the highlights in our budget. It talks about our salary full-time amount, and we notice there's a couple of little things that's off by about $100. We really saved about $52. Overall salary from 2020, based on what we spent in 2019, and that's with going to 117 slots instead of 116. I explained about that training position in my first part of that. Then we go down into general supplies. We decreased our request by $4,600. We decreased our small equipment request by $7,500. That's based on having to outfit less cars. We won't have to buy as much replacement equipment. Bulletproof vest. In case you didn't know this, bulletproof vests actually have an expiration. Now, I don't know if I think it's something that is planned obsolescence, if you've ever heard of that terminology, but we can't chance it putting a bulletproof vest on someone that has an expiration on it, and then something happens, and, you know, we're going to be in litigation for a long time over that. So we have a tickler file that tells us when things are going to expire. We run a list, and we notice that we had more money in the budget than we're going to need for next year because we know what's going to expire. So we reduced our bulletproof vest line item by $13,000. Those things are about $800, by the way. Parts and repairs, we decreased. Our telephone, landline, we decreased $1,100. Our postage actually increased. That's because we're required to mail out jury notices. I don't know if you know that, but when the judges, each judge gets their jury notices ready, those things are actually sent to us, and our staff members have to stuff those envelopes with additional information and a letter from the sheriff, and we mail those out. And there seems to be, those seem to be increasing. Our internet connection, we increased that by $9,115. Why did we do that? Well, currently, our internet connection is paid for out of Washington County IT department. Over the years, our own IT in-house person says he wished that could be in-house, because then we can, when we need to call the internet service provider to make any changes or to ask questions, we actually control the account. We don't have to go through county IT and so forth. We talked this over with the county IT director, and he was all for it. So it's a shifting of money. Yes, it increased our budget, but you should see a like decrease in that amount from the county IT budget. That's up to y'all to figure out, but we went into agreement with him to move that money. Our fleet liability did increase this year, so we increased that. We've actually been working on that, though. We think we might see some reductions, and so before this budget is adopted, we might be able to reduce that maybe by $7,000 or $8,000 in our request. We're going back and revaluing all of our vehicles. In fact, that was just recently done, but we're not 100% finished yet. We might be able to reduce that a little bit. Line item 3054, other sundry insurance. Our amount requested this year or for next year is zero, and that was decreased by $37,000. That wasn't by our design or our request. We received a memorandum from the comptroller who explained how the liability insurance costs are allocated, and it has resulted in our cost on the sheriff's side going to zero, and unfortunately that cost being shifted over to the detention side. Beyond that, I can't explain that any more than that, but Mr. Worthing probably can. Our capital, we decreased it by $187,000 just because we requested only 3 vehicles. So with that, I would like to see what questions you might have on the sheriff's budget before I get into some of the others.
Oh, okay, I'm sitting here, okay. Deakins, J.P. Deacon.
Thank you. I can only imagine what it takes to put this budget together because it's taken me a long time to review it. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
I need you to walk me through some general concepts with regard to compensation. Specifically, I want to start with line item number 1017, holiday incentive. Can you walk me through what exactly that is mechanically?
A holiday incentive is the hours of extra pay that our essential personnel receive when a holiday falls. And they get 8 hours of extra pay incentive. And there's 11, I think there's 11 holidays. So it's 88 hours.
It's additional pay for working the holiday.
It is.
They're actually working that holiday?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so it's just any people that are having to come in on a holiday?
It's the ones that are listed as essential personnel in the county policy salary guide.
Gotcha. And so that, what rate is that? Do you know what that is? Is it based on your hour, is it a
It's
percentage?
based on your hourly rate.
So you get just eight extra hours of,
That's correct.
gotcha. And then I'm assuming longevity pay is something that's additional. I'm moving line items on you now,
Okay,
$19.99.
I got you. I'm with you.
That's just,
Longevity pay is based on what the county policy is. It's based on the number of years of service. I think it's at, is it 10, 15, and 20, or 5, 10, 15? 5, 10, 15, and 20. It goes, it's a certain amount. It's paid once a year and in a lump sum
It's paid to everybody.
to the employee.
lump sum like once a year? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. It's not spread out over every paycheck.
I got
It's
you.
paid in one payment.
And then I'm going to skip all the way down to the vehicles line item, 4005.
Yes.
Can you give me some historical perspective there from prior years? I mean, I'm just wondering, 2018 seemed pretty high compared to the years around it. Can you give me
Well,
some?
2018 is when we added new officers, and we added 8 new officers, and they all had to have vehicles.
Gotcha.
And we didn't have vehicles for them, so that's why it went up. I will say, though, if you look back, I notice this chart only goes back to 2016, because that's as far as we can fit on a page. But in years past, for the whole time I was here, up until before this, we got $300,000 every year. It was a given that the patrol side of things, we would get $300,000, and we made that work. But over the years, we have actually brought it down, 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 down.
Well, that's great. It's welcome news, too, that we're getting longer life out of these vehicles. I'm glad that has panned out. I had requested and received a while back an inventory of the sheriff's vehicles. Does the sheriff's department provide vehicles to its leadership to drive?
Well, if you're counting me as a leader, yes.
Gotcha.
The sheriff gets a vehicle, these 2 guys get vehicles, yes.
What kind of vehicle do you drive?
I drive a 2004 Tahoe with 171,000 miles and a busted windshield, and the check engine light is on, and the high beam indicator has not worked in 4 years, but I'm supposed to get a new one.
You just get in and pound on the dash a little bit and hope.
So, but that's what I drive, yes.
Well, my question is, there were some Yukon Denali's on that inventory, and that really raised a red flag in my mind. I want to know how many of those we have.
We have 2.
2 Yukon Denali's.
The sheriff has one, and chief deputy has one.
Okay.
And most of the time, well, every one of those vehicles that we've ever bought were bought used, and in most cases, they were bought with drug fund money, not out of general fund. It's been a combination. It's been over the years. It depends on how much money do we have left in a capital account at a particular time, how many vehicles we might have that's available to trade in on a vehicle. You got to understand, the sheriff puts a lot of miles on his vehicle. He is involved in the HIDA process. He drives to Louisiana. He drives to Mississippi. He drives to Little Rock, he goes to sheriff's conventions, and the chief deputy, excuse me, it's been our history that he gets the hand-me-downs. I know the one he's driving right now has got 140 or 50,000, over 150,000 miles on it.
Well, gotcha. Those series of questions came directly from a constituent, so I think there's some perception issues there.
Sure, well, I understand that.
Got that. We don't lease any vehicles through the sheriff's department.
We do not lease. We explored it a couple years ago, and it just could not make the numbers fit.
I got you. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, on personnel driving the vehicles, most patrol people and most jailers are furnished with vehicles because we have felt in the past if these cars are seen out in neighborhoods in the evening and different places that this is crime deterrence. So this is one of the things I think that you do. Can you explain that more?
Well, obviously, all of our patrol officers have to have a vehicle. If we did not assign them take-home vehicles, you would talk about losing probably 3 to 4 hours a day of patrol time. Because if they had to drive in from parts unknown in their personal vehicle and then get into another vehicle, they would have to trade out. You won't believe what's in the back of these Tahoes. All of the equipment, all of their bags, the rifles that they have, the ammunition that they have, the accident investigation equipment that they have. Just a change out of all of that would be so cumbersome, and things would get lost and so on and so forth. We just don't want that. Besides that, you get, as a Washington County citizen, you get the added benefit of a patrol vehicle, a marked vehicle that's ready for service at any time, being at all areas of the county, going to and fro. The bad guys don't know if that guy or that female officer is on duty or not. They just see a patrol car. We can't put a number on it, but we can tell you that that's a crime deterrent. If I'm about to break into a house or steal something or assault someone and I see a patrol vehicle, I'm gonna think twice. We take our older vehicles as in patrol, and they are hand-me-downs if they're still viable. The jail, the detention side of the house, takes their hand-me-down vehicles that come out of transport. They take the equipment out of them, but they still have, because the officer that's driving has a portable radio, so they have communications. We leave the signage on the side of it, and although it's not responding to calls, the detention people are providing that deterrent, just like I talked about. Also, we are called upon all year long to provide special services for the University of Arkansas, like at the ball game over the weekend. We have to have patrol cars, even though it's an unmarked patrol car. It can sit at an intersection with its headlights flashing while someone is directing traffic. So all of those marked units, whether they're equipped exactly the same, provide a service, they provide a deterrent, and the citizens see it and see their tax dollars at work.
Okay, JP Eva Madison?
I just had a comment. I know it was several years ago we looked at the issue of take-home vehicles, and it was very interesting to note that the IRS, the tax code, treats law enforcement officers' vehicles different from every other kind of vehicle that's taken home because of those issues. And so if, I know certain elected officials have to do logs that are required, and then there's a tax consequence to other employees, but when it comes to law enforcement, they're in a category unto themselves, which I thought was very telling about the tax code giving beneficial treatment to these vehicles because of the issues you mentioned. I thought I'd say that.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up.
JP Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I've been spending way too much time looking at this, but I have a question on line item 1010, the workers' compensation. And my first question is, I can't figure out what's going on.
That's a question for Mr. Worthen. He gave us those figures. We don't get to choose how much to put in that. We're told how much to put in that line item, and that's based upon, I think it's unfairly based on some things, but it's based on overall utilization of the workers' compensation. And I don't think the sheriff's office deserves that formula, but we were told to put in that $175,000 for next year.
Well, I'm going to have to ask some other questions, because I buy workers' compensation every year myself, and if it's a self-insured fund, the rates should be set once a year. I was told we paid a premium once a year. It should be pretty simple arithmetic, and last year's budget obviously was bad wrong, and if this year's premium's 146, something bad's got to happen to make it 175 next year.
Yes,
So
I can do some research on that, but I'm not prepared to tell you the answer tonight.
I'll ask somebody else. Thank you.
Okay, Sue Madison's next, and then you'll be next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, of the take-home vehicles, are any going out of county at night?
Out of the county, no.
Good answer. Thank you.
Okay, J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Isn't this workers' comp, or is the Sheriff's Department part of the Arkansas Workers' Comp Trust Fund? Isn't it all part of the okay, it is. If you don't, you do get a refund if you don't use a percentage of your workers' comp. It comes back to you and you get a check
But it
saying,
doesn't come to
thank
me,
you.
and it doesn't come to the sheriff's office.
And it doesn't come to me either.
It goes to
No,
general
but
fund.
I-
It goes
yeah.
general fund.
But I do believe that that is part of the Arkansas Workers, what is it, Association of Counties?
Arkansas Association of Counties.
Workers' Comp Trust, and that's the formula that they come up with. If the numbers are not met, then you receive a refund. If it is exceeded, they cover it. But that's where that formula comes from. It's still not right, okay. If we get the money back, is it okay? No. But thank you.
Are there any other, okay, J.P. Yancey?
Yanez.
Yanez, okay, I'll get it right one of these days.
Hey, can you shed some light on the unemployment compensation? We have no amount budgeted this year.
On line 1011, why there's
10,
zero
11,
there?
Yes.
Some of these numbers, you have to understand, when we start the budget process, some of these numbers are plugged in by the comptroller's office. And we're told, don't mess with those. So we don't touch them. We come up with the overtime amount. We check to see that the big number, like line item 1001, is in there properly. We double check the Social Security matching to see that it ends up being 7.65% of salary, and including all the other line items that go with it. But some of those things are beyond my ability to even comment on or tell you how it's derived, because the numbers come down in our package.
Okay, J.P. Eva Madison, do you have a comment about the
No,
unemployment?
I just was going to say that the unemployment compensation is set based on an experience rating from the state. And so if you haven't had claims, then you're probably paying nothing. But if you have like a bunch of people that file for work unemployment compensation and your rate goes up, it's probably affecting it, so.
We had nothing in 2019, and if you go back to 2017, we had zero actual expenditures in that particular category.
Can we figure out, because I know there's sometimes set up where you're actually paying what is spent in unemployment compensation. Can we figure out what the setup is with the state?
Well, if you want to talk to Shannon Worthen, he can explain that to you, how
Okay.
it's set up. Because it's set up according to the number of people we have, how many accidents there are, and that kind of thing. So, that's, you know, I'm sure he would be glad to visit with you over that issue. All right, are there any other, okay, J.P. Lemming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The sheriff's doing all these trips. Does he still use his airplane to fly to any of these places?
Not that I've seen, and we don't, no.
Are we using it at all, or?
Well, it's used for transports. It was up until about 3 weeks ago, and we lost our pilot. And he decided to go into another line of work. And so the jail is exploring what they're going to do, but the airplane was used very heavily this whole year to do transports to places like California and taking people back and forth to prison in case, you know, sometimes we get ordered by a judge to have someone return from prison and brought to their presence like pronto. And with an airplane, you can do that. So we've had to do that a couple times.
So that's mainly what it's used for, those transport?
That's, yeah, that's all it's used for that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you have, okay, J.P. Deakins.
Just a point of inquiry here or whatever. Would it not be appropriate for Mr. Worthen to come up here and answer some of these questions that he has on, that we've had on these items?
Yes, that's, you know, whether he wants to do this or do it individually,
I'm just
I don't know.
wondering about my colleagues. My mind's wrapped around this right now. And
Oh,
to
okay.
get out and back in, it'd be.
well, I don't know if he's prepared, has all the information with him to do that. So we can have him do that later because we will have other budgets with workman comp. All right. I need the pleasure of the court. How do you want to handle this? Do we want to pass each one of these budgets as we go? Or do we want to wait and pass them all at once? We've got several just minor budgets like the boating safety, well, that's about communications, work release. Some of those are smaller budgets. Okay, let me
I
ask.
have another
okay.
question.
Just a minute.
This is
Okay.
probably me being a new member, but I'm not sure I understand the consequence of us passing these budgets if we still have questions.
Okay, let me explain how we've done this in the past.
Well, I'm not interested in how we've done it in the past. I'm interested in how we're going to do it right now.
Well,
And I have questions
okay.
about these budgets, and we just keep passing them, and I'm not sure what we're passing them to.
We're passing them to the quorum court for consideration to put in the whole package to pass.
Correct. But I think it's inappropriate to pass these budgets if we still have members with questions that have not had been answered.
Okay, what questions have not been answered?
J.P. Johnson had questions about workers' compensation. J.P. Yanez had questions about the unemployment compensation. I don't understand why we can't get these questions answered.
Well, okay.
I thought this was budget review.
It's review, analysis, understanding, and what we're gonna do with them. I mean, are we gonna change these? I mean, this amount of money in these columns are pretty well fixed by the state. So understanding what they do and us changing or reducing the amount are two different things though. Now, J.P. Johnson brought up that he thought that they were too high.
I don't think he did. Point of order. I don't think. he said
Okay,
that.
he can answer.
Workers' compensation calculations are real simple. The self-insured fund sets a rate that's based on payroll. You multiply the rate times the payroll, and you get a number.
Right.
If I look at the history on this page, what we're charged this year doesn't make sense, and what we're budgeting for next year makes less sense.
Well, that's
And I'm just
asking how it's been figured, basically. Okay.
I want to know how we
okay.
calculated and how it was figured.
Okay, our controller, Shannon, Worthing, please come up. Thank you. Shannon Worthing, please come up and see if you can explain this to their satisfaction. Okay, Mr. Worthing.
Okay. Workers' comp is figured by the AAC, and it's in a way similar to the way Mr. Johnson said it, but there's probably 30 different classes depending on the riskiness of the job category. In other words, office workers have a lower rate than the road department or the construction workers. So there's all these different categories with different experience rates. And then but we don't know what it's going to be until we get the bill in March or April. So when we're doing the budgets, we're trying to guess. And last year, we guessed way wrong. For the sheriff, we put down about the same as 2018 for 2019, but then it turned out instead of 100,000, it turned out to be 146,000. So, and that was throughout all the departments in the whole county. And so those budgets were wrong and had to be eaten, in a big way. So what I did this year to try to avoid that happening again, I just took what was the previous year and added 20% to it for the current budgets for all the county departments. And that's how I came up with the budget, to try to get it a little closer to what it might actually be, because it went up so much last year. So, and then when we then it's because it's based on since the state is self-insured, it just depends on how many workers' compensation claims happen for the year, and then they spread it out amongst all the counties according to their formula. So it's hard to predict, and just to keep from getting burned again to the tune of almost 50%, I just added 20% to all the budgets to come up with the estimate of what it might be for 2020. So right or wrong, that's how I figured it for this year.
Is Mr. Driver giving you any help?
No, it's done by the risk management people at the AAC, and we submit all the workers in the right categories and what their salaries are, and then they calculate it, but we don't know what the bill is going to be till into 2020.
Will Nelson Driver have this information? He does our risk management, right?
Well, he's not involved with this part. It's
okay.
The people at the
AAC
that have their own risk management people that calculate this, and they're the ones that bill us, and we just fill out the information.
And hope it's in the ballpark field of what actually happens. Okay.
Yeah, so I just added 20% to everybody's budget, because we got burned to the tune of 50% increase last year. So just trying to get ahead of the curve, and hopefully that'll be close to what the actual number will be next year. But if y'all want to decrease it to what it was the previous year, we can, but when the bill comes in, it could be, all over the, so I was just trying to be conservative and figure a 20% increase to make sure the budget's recovered for that bill when it comes in.
I get what we're doing, but a self-insured fund, by definition, by the end of this year, should set the rates for every classification of employee in the fund for next year. And if they're not doing that, we got the wrong folks. Because workers' compensation, you should hit your budget very, very close, and it should be very, very predictable. And I'm not pointing fingers, sir. You're using the best information you've got. What I'm saying is we need to get better information from the people running the fund, because they ought to give us a rate for every classification of employee. And in the private sector, there are no workers' compensation rates going up in Arkansas today. The market is very, very soft, and all the insurers want to come here and write workers' compensation today. So we shouldn't be seeing this. And let's get the right people and let's get the right answer.
J.P. Pond?
Nobody mentioned it yet, and I thought it ought to be brought up that AAC is the Arkansas Association of Counties. And I don't believe that there are going to be any private operators come in and do the service that we can get from those association of counties. That being said, and maybe this sounds a little argumentative, we probably got the right people. Maybe you need to get some explanation for them, but they're covering every county in the state. Every county in the state. And by doing that, all of us join together, it's a little easier to be self-insured. Not self-insured Washington County itself, but the entire state. I don't know, you may have other people listening here that don't understand that. Thank you.
But
Okay,
in
JP
private
hires.
industry,
J.P. hires? Oh, excuse me.
in private industry, the insurance company sells insurance for workers' comp to the companies, and the companies know what their rate's going to be when they buy it, so they can budget for the whole year based on that rate, and then for the year. So it's this is different because we don't know what it's going to be until after we've already done the budget, and then so it's a little bit different from the private sector since we're self-insured at the state level.
Okay, thank you. J.P. hires?
Thank you. I just want to mention that I think that workman's compensation for our law enforcement officers is going to be a little bit more unpredictable because they're in a job where people are shooting at them and running them off the road. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I feel like it's a more high-risk position, so we're going to have a little bit less predictability in that situation. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Worthen? Okay.
Just
J.P. Yanez.
Thank you. Clarification on unemployment compensation.
Okay, unemployment compensation is different because the AAC charges us for that based on the actual unemployment claims that come in, whereas in the private sector, there's a rate set, and then depending on the company's experience rate, that rate can go up and down, and they can budget for it and plan for it based on the rate they're given. But for the AAC, it's just actual unemployment claims that come in, they're charged back to that specific department. So there again, it's not really predictable or budgeted, ability to be budgeted for ahead of time. And then for the sheriff's budget, it's been such a small amount in the grand scheme of things, zero with some years and less than 1,000 in other years, that it didn't seem worthwhile budgeting an amount in there. But of course, Murphy's Law indicates that our 2019 budget was zero based on the $300, zero, and the $500. And so then, of course, we got $5,700 worth of claims in 2019 that we couldn't anticipate. So that's how that budget number was arrived at.
Okay, J.P. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move we pass this line item, Sheriff, 1,000 through 0400.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Thank you,
J.P.
Madam
Sue
Chair.
Madison.
Well, before we vote on this, I'd just like to say that I'm considerably bothered by the fact that our comptroller has taken it upon himself to build cushion of his own determination into this budget on the workers' comp issue, when we are sitting here thinking these are reliable numbers, when in fact he's decided to build in some cushion here, and we have at least one JP who thinks that's not necessary. But what further bothers me about that is this number will remain here, and then later on, when our memories have dimmed, and maybe not this budget, but another budget with this similar cushion comes in and says, well, I've got this excess in that line item, I'd like to buy some new office furniture, or I'm just bothered by this, so I'd like to not see this practice continue.
Is there any other discussion? J.P. Pond.
I take notice that Mr. Worthen has come forward and explained to us where the conservative, if you will, condition has been put in there. Now we know about it. So it's either on his own if we decide against him, or it's with us if we decide for him. But I've got one other thing before this vote that I need from you, and that is, you were about to explain to us some of the way this has been done in the past before you were interrupted, and I still want to hear that. And by the way, I will recognize that there are some people sitting here that don't really care how we did it in the past, and so they don't really care why
Well,
we did it
I
a
will
certain
say
way in the past, and if they can't.
Very shortly, as quickly as I can.
Yes, ma'am.
There
Thank
are
you.
some items in this budget we really don't have control over, and workman comp's one of those. And that's why, but if people want to know about it, I don't have any problems with them learning about what's in the budgets. But I'm not, but, okay, that's all I'm going to say. J.P. Eva Madison.
Nelson Driver has just shared with me that the reason the sheriff's office increased in workers' comp is due to the fact of claims frequency and severity. So the experience modifier went from 1.33 to 1.43. So I guess just based on the claims. We bid workers' comp every other year. And then the workers' comp cost also goes up as salaries go up. But I think the biggest factor for those who understand workers' comp is that the experience modifier went up 1/10 of a point because of the frequency and severity of past claims. So he said he's welcome to come, but I just asked him quickly.
J.P. Johnson.
I would still like to see the rates that they've assigned, and I'd like to see the arithmetic. Okay?
I'm not trying to substitute it. I was just sharing information.
I'm a trustee of another self-insured fund, and I know how it works, and something doesn't make sense to me.
Well, okay. When you
Yeah,
find
I'd be
out, I
glad
hope
to-
you share that with the rest of us.
Yeah, I'd
So,
be glad to get
Yeah.
that built to you and how it's calculated.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Comptroller, part of your office responsibilities is handling the daily financial operations budgeting for Washington County and to ensure proper, accurate, and compliant record keeping, which includes reviewing, researching, and recommending contracts for services, supplies, and equipment, assisting departments with their purchasing and accounting, and reviewing all departmental budget expenditures throughout the year to help manage the fund. Just as our county treasurer has a forecast for projected revenues, sometimes he errs under, sometimes he misses the target, but not very often. But it's something that you have to budget for. To me, I see like this, what you have done is wise and prudent and the right course of action to have the money in the event an accident happens. Isn't that why we have set aside certain amount for such things? I think what you're doing is transparent. I mean, we're going to get audited, and if we have more money in the budget than what you prepared for, then it's going to go back into general fund. I don't think you can use it to buy nice furniture or a Denali, can you?
No, within the personal services line items, there's no line item transfers allowed without the quorum court's permission, so there's no way that any excess that might accrue there could be spent on office furniture or anything else without the quorum court's permission.
I just, I think when we start questioning people's integrity and their intent, I think we're skating on very thin ice, and I would just prefer not to do that. That if we have a question, let's raise the question, but not an accusation. And I know that you have done, you're a CPA, are you not?
Yes.
We can open up a can of worms and review past comptrollers and all the mistakes that those cost us, but we're not going to do that. I trust that you'll come before this court and you're transparent, and you also are audited. So I think that we have the reassurance that you're going to do right in your position, and I commend you for that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, J.P. Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, from my understanding about this process, we can pass these budgets, but we're going to continue to look at numbers through this entire process. We can come back and change this thing later on if we feel necessity, or we found information that comes together that says, hey, we made a mistake here, we go back and correct it. So I think we're beating this thing to death right now because we still got a lot of considerations to be given to the entire budget.
Okay, J.P. Yanez?
Thank you. Completely trust you in your process. Just want to know, and don't want to put you in the spot, any other line item that there is a cushion built on out of the norm?
No, all the items in supplies, other services and charges, and capital outlay are all given by the departments, as well as part-time salaries, overtime compensation, and what we give the departments is longevity pay based upon the employees' longevity that we know that we're going to have to pay out. We also provide, everything else is calculated based on a percentage. Social Security matching is 7.65%, retirement is 15.32%. Health insurance, the employee's portion is $466 a month. The life insurance is $11 a month. So pretty much everything else, the only thing we provide is the longevity pay amount, and then our best guess for unemployment compensation and workers' compensation. Everything else is provided by the individual departments.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, but this motion, we have the transfer of the person from the detention center to the enforcement center is in this budget, and the raises for the enforcement, which is, I've been told not a raise, whatever the step system is in this budget. And I have requested that we not act on these until we decide what the raises are going to be for all employees. And are you shaking your head that that's not in this budget?
No, it's not. The step's not in the budget.
The step's not in the budget?
We were told to keep that budget neutral on that side, so it has adjustments on it.
It has the transfer of the person from the detention center to the law enforcement center part of the budget. So that's one position. I really don't, in my mind, that's not a new position, that's just a transfer. Okay, JP Eva Madison.
So I was not aware that the step is not in this, because it is a requirement of existing county ordinance. And so if Madam Chair, if you're going to act on that, then you need to bring forth an ordinance to repeal that, because.
Well, we're not.
I mean, that's what we have to do.
But we're not, we're just postponing it. We're not acting on it.
Well,
we're going to postpone it until we decide.
The whole reason that we put this into to ordinance so that it was automatic every year was so that our law enforcement officers did not have to be treated like this every year.
Okay.
So that they had the certainty of it.
I agree with you on that point, but we have a budget that we need to bring under control. And unfortunately, the sheriff's department is a huge part of that budget. So therefore.
Well, yeah, and I think law enforcement officers are a pretty important part of our budget.
Well, I think they are too, but I think the road department is too.
Well, if I had to do
let's
that
not
one.
argue.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think that we need.
I apologize. Let's move on. Do you have more comments, JP Madison?
No, I think we needed to see the budget tonight with both options so that we were informed of the options before us instead of being handed one that was decided by someone else.
All right. I want to see how much money this per day or the interlocal agreement may bring in before we make any decisions. All right, JP Pond.
I would, I'd like to add a little bit, a suggestion on this. I understand how that step system's set up, but I don't believe you're gonna be totally repealing the step system to determine not to activate the increase that comes along with it whenever possibly other people, other salaries are not going to be increased. If that was a situation, then what that meant was last year, we passed some kind of a situation that's from here on out, the quorum court would not really have any control over. I think the increase that goes along with that step system ought to be something that the court votes on or approves or votes down every year.
Actually, it is an ordinance form. JP Madison's correct about that. Okay, JP Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be clear because it's something I want to go on record in saying that we have not voted or discussed, other than your opinion, to have a hiring freeze and not raise any salary. So I feel like before we continue going on, like this is what the direction we're going without any further discussion, we need to have that discussion.
Okay.
But I'm not saying tonight because we've got a full agenda here. But I personally have not voted, and I am an existing member of the quorum court, and I do not agree with the hiring freeze or holding salary. So I'm just saying, for the record, we're going about it like that is set in
Well, do you
stone.
have another way to come up with
No, I do
another
not.
1.4?
No, I do not, but I'm hoping
Okay, if
we
you
have
do
that
that, then
discussion.
I would be very in favor of looking at it.
That's fine, but when we vote and that becomes the deal, then I'm fine with it. But we have not voted on that, and that is not set in stone. Thank you.
No, it's not set in stone, and this is why I keep bringing it up, that, you know, but we can either fold and go with a carryover 1.6 or whatever. All right. Washington. Well,
Thank you. I would
you
just like,
come up here, Harvey, and sit in this seat. And you- Okay.
I would just like to remind the court that we do have a motion on the floor, and while we have had a very spirited discussion, most of it is not really germane to the motion that is on the floor. So we need to take care of that first, and then we can move into
Okay,
whatever
we
else.
do have a motion on the floor. It was made by J.P. Jenkins and seconded by Eva Madison, and we have clarified that the salary's not in here, but that one position is. And I said I don't consider that an addition. All right, all those in favor, raise your.
Point of order, what is the motion?
The motion is to pass the sheriff's budget as presented. No, it wasn't put in, okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, all those not in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's passed. On these, the majority passes. All right, now we've done the sheriff's budget. Let's move on to work release, I guess. Which one did you want to do next, Sheriff?
You better get that monster out of the way if you're gonna spend.
What monster?
The jail.
Oh.
And then the other ones are gonna be really quick because they're
Yeah, I know,
self-funded.
okay. Well, I
Right.
thought we might do something to kind of get, okay.
Isn't the jail next on the agenda?
No, we've got work release.
All right, we can do it. They'll be very quick.
Jail operation is,
Yeah.
well, it's almost 8 o'clock.
next?
We've almost been at this 2 hours, and
Yeah.
all right. Let's run through these other small budgets, Sheriff, and then tackle the jail. I'm gonna have to have since all of this is under Sheriff, I'm assuming we can move it around.
Whatever you like, ma'am.
Okay, so
We're good.
let's do the jail operation.
You want the jail next, all right.
Just do it and get it over with.
So, to present the detention budget is going to be Major Randall Denzer, who you've seen and met several times. His captain over the detention center is Alan Johnson. And then his captain over our work release, all of our contracts, transport, Captain Kenny Yates will come forward now and present.
So Randall, which one are you gonna start with?
We can do the work release right quick on
Let's
our
do it
side.
right quick. Okay, 463. Work release 463.
Are we doing work?
Yeah, all of this is under jail, so we'll,
Okay, the work release is it's self-funded, you know, it's budget neutral. This is from our program that was started back in the early 90s, At one time, we was up 175 folks was on it to keep them out of jail. These people could actually come and be booked in and show up once a week and keep their job and keep them out of jail. We have 51 currently on it now. And there's a $15 fee that's charged when they come in to help pay for the insurance. All this, like I say, all this money goes into this budget. And, you know, we do everything from, you know, just like the South Campus, we mow everything except the road department. We buy lawnmowers, chainsaws, whatever needs to happen. You know, down through the years when it was up with 175 folks, we was even able to buy vehicles out of it. But we help the county, all nonprofit organizations, and then also the blue stripes that you see out on the road that are picking up trash, that's part of this program.
Motion we pass.
Second.
All right. Are there any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. All right, it's passed. All right. You want Randall, are you going to do communications 499? Or which one do you want to do next?
The rest of them is the other majors. So we're probably ready to go to the,
jail operation?
yes.
4102 and 4103.
Operations.
Okay.
Okay, to start off with, I wish I had as much good news as the other major did, but due to the situation, you know, the last couple of years, or maybe even 3 years back, we've kept our budget flat and then tried to operate out of it, and whatever it grew into is what we ended up with. And we was always banking on our prisoner care has helped this budget, but this year with the projections and everything we got, we actually made a real budget. We looked at the numbers, we got 6 months worth of data. You know, this whole thing is population driven. As you know, about a year and a half ago, you know, we started turning loose 200 detainees a month. A year went by, we had 20 or 30 detainees sleeping on the floor. And now, you know, we're still turning loose 200, and we have 100 on the floor. So it's population driven, everything's happened. So like I say, most of these numbers will reflect that. But also, let me back up a little bit and say, when we say the jail budget, we're talking about transport, work release, and community service. So it's all of them put together as far as on the money that's spent. So, you know, our transport, like I say, the Captain Yates will give some numbers when we get down to that, but it's still population driven. You know, one of our biggest expenses is, you know, when somebody gets in trouble and you see on TV and they run off to wherever, like California, Houston, Florida, we have to go get them. Transport, we get an order, we have to go and leave. And like we was talking about the airplane, you know, at one time, it can fly about 600 miles as a crow flies. And so we can leave out of a day and be back of evening, or it would take, you know, 2 or 3 days. California, a little bit longer. But, you know, Texas, Illinois, that circle. And it may not save us much money, but it saves us time when these people, you know, because once they sign paperwork, we're under the gun to get them on a certain day. You know, and this comes from the prosecutors and the judges. We don't control this. So just a little bit of thought on that. So with that being said, be ready to take questions.
All right, we've got a lot, as you said, you did this realistically, especially, you know, we were up to, what, 1.1 million on what? Food? So, anyway, okay, J.P. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at line item 3090, 3094, meals and lodging. 2019, we were at 27,000 up to 45. Can you get some sort of a explanation on that one?
Yes, meals and lodging, it's for our training, it's for our schools we go to, but one of our biggest expenses is when we go get these detainees. Like when we go to Florida or we go to California, where we spend the nights at, the food we have to feed the detainee. So like I say, these numbers that Captain Yates has going to reflect how many more trips we've made, and that's where this increase is.
So can you tell me, in relation to last year, how many more trips were made, these long distances this year as compared to the last?
How many more trips?
How
this
many
year?
more of these long distance trips have been made to transport detainees from one state back to Arkansas this year as opposed to last?
Yes, ma'am. In total for 2018, we did 132 out-of-state extraditions. Year-to-date, at the end of August of this year, we've already done 141.
Thank you.
Okay. Wait a minute. J.P. Lance Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go start with line item 1001, and I'm asking this question for my own edification. Okay, I'm looking at the backup for the additional staff, and my first question is, how do we start, or why do we start with 2,236 hours?
I don't know what information, you're talking about numbers of employees?
No, when you calculated this backup for the additional staff, you multiply the rate by 2,236 hours
Well,
to get their annual pay, and I don't understand that.
Okay, well, the jail back probably maybe 10 years ago, I'm not exact on that date, is we went to a 207K process where they work 86 hours a pay period, and we get the 6 hours are still at the straight time. And this mainly went into when we started working 12-hour shifts. We went to 12-hour shifts, and for that to come out in a regular pay period, you would have to pay overtime, the 86 times 2. So when we went to the 207K, there are certain guidelines you fall under that you have to announce it, and now that's the hours that we work now compared to the 2080, just a regular 40-hour week. But we're not paying overtime for that 86 hours. It's straight time.
Okay. And all new employees are paid 88 hours of holiday incentive?
A year.
Yeah, a year.
A year.
Yes, a year.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I'm looking at the, line item 2005, the food budget, and I'm not questioning. For some reason, the budget for this year is significantly less than it was in the previous years. We budgeted $830,000 for 2019 when we spent $1,086,000 in 2018. And now we're budgeting $1,133,000 for next year. And I don't get the logic.
Well, the logic you can see is on our 2019 expenditures, we've already spent $526,000. This is population driven. Again, don't want to say overcrowding, but just like the 100 were sleeping on the floor.
Oh, I get that. I guess my real question is, and you probably can't answer, is what happened a year ago? That's my real question.
Well, a year ago, this $1 million that we went over. The population's been growing for about the last 4 years.
But then we reduced the budget by $200,000.
I'm not following you on that. Let me check here.
Okay.
Well,
What we did the last 2 or 3 years is we kept our budget flat.
So we did not increase it on the anticipation it was going to be higher. We knew it was going to be higher, but we was asked to keep our budget flat.
Okay, and I'm just trying to figure out what the real numbers are, guys. That's why I'm asking the questions.
The best way we calculated it is we took our year-to-date halfway through the year,
Okay,
doubled that.
I'd have done exactly what you did for next year. I'm trying to figure out, because somewhere we're gonna have to pay for the overrun for this year. Are we not?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of figured in the fusion that we've done. But that's simply because the last 2 or 3 years we've kept our budget flat and
Okay,
had
we're
the
good.
infusion at the end.
Go to line item 3054, and you probably can't. I need somebody to answer the question, what other sundry insurance is.
Okay,
Because all of a sudden, that's jumped $40,000.
well, it's been in several budgets.
And
Mr.
as
Worthing?
Major Hoyt also said, theirs come out of theirs over to ours.
Okay, I'll
Their
get
decrease came to
the,
ours.
I'll get the answer somewhere.
Okay.
One more and I'm done. 4005, the vehicles. That's the line item, if I'm not mistaken, that in February, this court added $232,000 to the budget to buy cars we had to have. And it looks like we've only bought one. Is that correct?
No, sir, they're ordered.
Huh?
The vehicles are ordered.
They're ordered.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I'm sorry.
all except for one is in, and our transport rigs are in service.
So they're here now.
Yes,
This
but
is
there's
just
one
old-
that hadn't
this
been,
is old
but
numbers.
yes.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Okay, J.P. Deakins?
Thanks, gentlemen. A couple questions for you, just once again, for my edification. Line item 2023, parts and repairs, we got a little increase in there, and there, back in the back here, the justification or the explanation says something about a design change. Can you just fill us in on the design change?
Yes, sir, I can. When we were putting our numbers together for our capital requests, we were contacted by General Motors, who makes the Tahoes, and they told us in 2020, there's going to be a body style change. So they were trying to notify all of government agencies that equip them with cages, consoles, things of that nature, that our items in our old Tahoes that we typically switch back over into the new vehicles will no longer fit. So we've tried to budget for new cages, new console, things that will not fit from the early body styles because of the body style change.
Great. Good news, good news. With this medical care contract, I'm sure we're required by law to provide some sort of minimum medical care to detainees. I'm assuming, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we're providing that minimum care, correct?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. And no more?
No, we're providing what's requested by, or required by the state.
Sure. So when you go through, you work with Karis Medical, forgive me, I don't know his exact name, you basically put out, or he has the requirements, and this is what his proposal is to meet those requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
To meet those, okay. This is a general question for me, too. I feel like transport costs could be quite significant for the jail. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, they
And
are.
I'm talking about just every day moving people from jail to court, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you think we're utilizing all the possibilities we could for video conferencing? And, I see that there's other places that have video conferencing where the inmate can see the judge from, where it wouldn't require the physical transport of that person. Do you see any possibility to investigate anything with that area?
It is possible, and we have decreased our trips to circuit court some so far year to date this year because of that, and they seem to be doing more and more of that. We've got the services and the equipment there for that, and they are utilizing that more and more.
Okay, so that's something that we might be able to try to promote as a court.
Yes, sir, we are promoting that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
All right. We do have the 15 positions in this budget.
16.
Well-
16.
We just voted on one of them because we moved it over to the sheriff's department.
Yes, we lost that slot.
So we're talking about 15,
16.
16?
Yes, because they took the money too.
Okay, well, on our sheet back here, it looks like 15, okay, 16.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like for us to delay voting on those 16 new positions until we have a better grasp of the amount of money we're gonna have. Are there any other questions? I would suggest that we pass this budget without the 16 new positions. JP Pond.
Move to tentatively pass this without the 16 positions.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, we'll have a second. Now, this doesn't mean we're not going to give them some new positions. It's just that we get a better idea of how much money we're going to be able to use. Yes?
One other thing that we haven't been doing, and forgive me, it is something we've usually done in the past. We've moved to pass all these, but I think we've been doing it with the idea that it's a tentative pass.
Yes.
Move to tentatively pass. I don't think that's been brought up yet, but.
I think, that was discussed.
Was it?
Yes, it's been discussed tonight. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, JP Deakins.
I'm not going to vote to pass another budget out of this body until we have some more general goals of what we're working towards. And this is not a reflection on you gentlemen, it's not a reflection on the work that was put into this, but I don't see the utility in a tentatively pass. I don't understand that concept. Maybe somebody could explain it to me, but I just wanted to let everyone know that. Thank you.
Well, I'll try to answer that in that parts of the budget I think everybody agrees on, and I think we need to go on and pass those parts because we've discussed them. Those parts that we have further discussion or concerns about, then we'll come back and discuss at a later date. But we're only going to come back and discuss those things like salary. We're not going to go back through the whole budgets again. If we want to do that, that's fine, but then we'll have to schedule a meeting for tomorrow night, the next night, and the next night. Because if you want to do that, then we'll do it, and we'll be here and do it. Now, I hope that some of the newer JPs have a little bit of confidence in the people that have been here, that there's just some things in these budgets we don't have control over. So, all right, we have okay, JP Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you fellas please give me an idea, a picture of what we're looking at right now without, because I trust that you wouldn't ask for positions unless they were absolutely needed. So can you give me a picture of what we're looking at now in comparison to these 16 more positions and what it would look like with those positions?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. First of all, as we discussed earlier with the 207K, we tried to best effectively manage our staff with the fewest amount of people. Right now, on a daily average, we're holding over 700 detainees on daily average. On day shift, we have 31 employees at full staff. So everybody's been hired, nobody's called in sick, nobody's been on vacation. We got 31 employees. Night shift.
You don't have any vacancies at this time?
I think there's 7.
7 vacancies, okay.
I'm saying best case scenario, everybody's here, no one's called in sick, no one's on vacation. The maximum
Those are the
number-
ones that are employed. That's what you're talking about, but you do have 7 vacancies.
Correct. The maximum we could have per shift is 31 on day shift. Night shift is 27. Our biggest bottleneck, as everybody has heard the discussions with the jail overcrowding, our biggest bottleneck is our booking and intake and release, which is all one area. We have, if you, I think included in your packet was our justification for these 16 positions. If you look here, in this, we added in a projection of 7,500 additional with Springdale closing. We all know it's not going to be 7,500, but that's the only number we had, so that's the number we plugged in. So if you look, 22,000 for this projection for next year, 22,454 people is going to come through our doors in intake. We're going to book 22,852. You might ask, why is that number higher than what comes in? Just an easy example, someone gets picked up in Benton County on a misdemeanor warrant. We're going to cite them on if they come here anyway. We'll let them bond from there and just do a dummy booking. So we actually book more than we bring in. And that's the number we usually give you. You know, a given year we'll book 13 to 15,000 on average. Well, we forget that we also have to release that many people. Yeah, we got to book them out. We have so many different things, and currently with our current staffing, if it's at full staff, we work with 3 booking officers, which there's 5 booking stations designed, but we only have 3 booking officers. We have 2 male intake officers and 1 female intake officer. Now, it's not just booking and releasing either. Every person that comes in there has to be, if it's Class A misdemeanor or felon, they have to be fingerprinted. If they're going to be staying there, they have to be strip searched and showered out. There's so many more things from court. Everyone goes back and forth to court. Someone's got to process that court paperwork. These booking officers, 6 people in booking, minus the supervisor in there, is having to book in, release, search, inventory the property when they come in, inventory the property when they go out. So we've got a conservative estimate of 60 to 70,000 people. One thing I forgot to add in is people that come through booking and intake that's going out to a medical appointment, going out to court outside our facility, is going to be around 8,000, 8,800 people a year. So conservatively, you can say 60 or 70,000 people are going through booking a year. We're working with 6 people and a supervisor. 16 people might sound like a lot. That's 4 people per shift. I'm asking instead of 31 people a shift for 35. And nights, instead of 27, 31. 4 people per shift. You look at it, 16 people, it sounds like I'm asking for a lot. I'm asking for 4 people a shift. We're utilizing the 12-hour shifts, so we're only staffing 2 shifts a day. If we was on 8-hour shifts, I got to staff 3 shifts a day. On 10-hour shifts, you're paying 30 hours in a 24-hour period because the shifts overlap. We're being as efficient as we can with the people that we have, but we're putting our people at risk in a bottleneck in a small area of 60 to 70,000 people a year going through there. I'm asking for 4 people a shift. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a member of this court, it is our responsibility and our duty to provide for law enforcement. That is our duty. We're supposed to fund it, and we're supposed to provide for it, because the county, has to provide law enforcement for the citizens, and that is mandated by the state. I support your 16 positions that you need, and I think they should be a part of this process. To separate it doesn't make sense to me, and it's really boggling my mind. We have too many moving parts. I can't get a clear picture of what we need. I value the integrity of your request. Sure, everybody pads their budget some, because you don't know what you're going to get, but you know what you need. You need 16 positions. I recommend that this court approve the positions that our law enforcement agency needs to protect the citizens of our county. That is our responsibility to fund that. It is their responsibility to protect the citizens. If we don't fund them, how can they do their jobs? It's going to come back on us. Our job isn't to save money. Our job is to properly allocate the money to the departments that need the money And I think that's one thing that we just need to do. I am not in support of the motion separating it. It's too confusing, too many moving parts. And I
Well,
think
we've
we
got-
need to make a decision.
we've got a
We either
motion on the
support you
floor.
and that we do this. I am not in support of the motion. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask one question. I want to ask one question.
Then I would like to make a
of
motion
everybody on
that
this
we would
court.
amend that to include the 16 positions.
I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Justice Pond.
Okay. I
We
want to
need a
see
second.
I
Wait a
want to
minute.
see a show of hands of everybody that's going to vote to increase the millage from 4.4 to 0.6.
Point of order, that's
Yes,
not
it is.
germane to
It
this
is-
discussion.
It is germane
It's not
because
on
we
the
do
agenda.
not have the money.
It's not on the agenda.
I know it's not on the agenda, but we can't pass something that we don't have the money for. How many people are going to vote to increase the millage?
I think we need to
No,
decide on this
no.
first.
We need the money first. We can't
But
go
that's
out
not a
and buy
motion. You're
something
making a
and pay for
motion.
something if
Out
we
of
don't
order.
have
It
the
is.
This
money.
argument is out of order.
It is.
The
Well,
tone
it
is out of
isn't,
order.
no, it's not out of order. It is very germane to the question.
With all due
All
respect
right,
to the chair, I would
okay.
ask that you keep the tone and this has been a stressful enough meeting without
I
you
know.
yelling at us.
I'm not yelling. Well, I may be yelling, okay, because I see, if you haven't got the backbone to pass the millage, then you shouldn't do the easy thing.
But that's
and
not
write-
the motion on the floor.
All right, we have a motion on the floor, and J.P. Pond.
Accepted my friendly
Okay,
motion.
will you please be quiet?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Thank you. J.P. Pond amended the motion to include the 16 positions. Is that correct?
Did we get a second on that?
I don't know.
We did not.
There was a second originally.
Was there a second on the friendly amendment? Or did-
No, okay, she made the motion to amend it, and you seconded it. That's all you have to have. And then we vote on it.
I didn't second it.
Oh, you didn't second
I
it?
said I would accept it as a friendly amendment.
Oh, okay, I thought okay.
Okay.
Let's go.
Point of information, can somebody clarify what's on the floor? I think we
I
all
will
need to have the
clar-
motion restated. Thank you.
All right.
Do we know what it is?
Lisa made a motion to amend the motion to include the 16 positions. Is there a second? All right, there is a second. All those in favor of the amended motion to add the 16 positions, we need everybody in here.
It's a friendly amendment.
Point of order, it's a majority of those voting in committee
All
for a
right.
simple motion.
You're-
So if they're
you
gone,
are
they're gone.
correct. You are correct. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. All right. All those opposed?
I'm very disappointed in the disgruntled discourse.
It is
So I'm
5 to 5, is that correct?
It's not passing.
Patty? And I'm going to vote against it. Okay. Everybody, okay, just a minute. Everybody in favor of adding the 16 positions at this time, okay, excuse me, I'm adding to your motion. Adding the 16 positions, please raise your hand in favor.
That's what we just voted on.
I know, we're voting on it again because
That's
there
not,
was confusion.
Madam Chair, that is out of order. And if we're going to do this, we need to do it
All right,
according
okay.
to, no, if we're going to do this, we need to do this according to parliamentary procedure. I am embarrassed at the way that we have conducted this meeting tonight. We have people watching us, and we have constituents that are hoping that we do what is right for the budget.
That's right.
And do right by this county. And if we're going to do it, let's follow Robert's rules. Let's follow our our bylaws, and let's do it the way that it's supposed to do. We can't just come in here and make up the rules as we go along.
No one's made up any rules as we go
No,
along.
it was not a personal statement towards you. The point is that we have a system in place, and let's just use it. We could be more efficient. I think everyone is tired. We're probably all ready to go. I get that. But we could be more efficient if we would use the tools that we already have.
Okay. Patty, do you have the total for the vote? Go on. Okay. Well, I had, okay, let's,
It's already been voted, you can't do that, Madam Chair.
yes.
Given the confusion about the vote, I move to expunge the prior vote and revote.
All those, okay, all those in favor of expunging the vote? JP Yanez.
Okay, new member of the quorum court is very confused of the process we're following. I don't think I have a very good example of how to conduct a budget meeting at this time. I don't know the process, and we're voting on things that I'm not sure we should be voting on.
All right. All right. Was there a second to your motion? All right, we have a motion to expunge the vote, and all those in favor, and a second, J.P. Jenkins. All those in favor of expunging the vote, raise your hand. 6. All those that are against expunging the vote, raise your hand. All right, it passes. All right. The motion is, Patty, do you have it written down? You want to read it? No? Okay. The motion is that we add the 16 positions to the jail budget. Well, allow the 16. Put them back in. Lisa, please. All right. Do I have a motion?
We don't need a motion.
All right. Okay. All those in favor of adding the 16 positions, please raise your hand.
No, it's to present the budget as is.
Yes.
No, the 16, oh, okay, yeah, they're in there, okay. To present the budget as is, all right. Raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, 7. All those against the budget, raise your hand. All right, it's passed as presented. All right, do we have another budget? What? No, we're finished. I mean, we've got to fund it now. I don't know how.
Point of order
okay.
now. We have
Lance, JP.
Point of order. Point of order, we just amended the motion. We still have to vote on JP Pond's original motion to pass the budget. As not as amended now as whatever we did.
I thought we just did that.
No, JP Ecke voted to amend, and I thought that JP Pond had merged into his original motion, but the chair recognized it as.
It was it actually was an amendment that was not necessary because the positions were already in the budget, and I asked for us to remove the positions. And so therefore, that motion really, or my comments, that was never voted on. So we voted, so her amendment was really not necessary because the budget contained those 16 positions. Is that, you think that's right, Madison?
I'm not.
JP, I'm not trying to be smart.
No, I know, and I think there's confusion, because I think some people may have voted, the last vote we just took, that we expunged and voted again, was just with respect to the 16 positions. JP Pond still had an original motion to pass that budget. I think the confusion arose because when JP Ecke made her motion, JP Pond was willing to merge it into his original motion, but the chair recognized it as a motion to amend, which wasn't quite a motion to amend, and so technically, I think we still have the main motion pending.
All right. The main motion then is to pass the sheriff's budget as presented.
The jail budget.
Jail budget, I mean. The jail budget as presented. All right. Do I have a, JP Pond?
Let's get clear about it this time. Is this presented with the
Yes,
employees?
yes, because they're in the budget.
All right, okay.
They're in the budget. All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of passing the jail budget as presented, raise your hand. All right, all those opposed to the jail budget, raise your hand. All right, motion passed. All right.
Well, we have the jail maintenance.
Okay. Go over it. Which, jail maintenance is 100.
It is the 0127 budget. 3017 0127 jail maintenance.
All right, are there any questions on the jail maintenance budget? J.P. Johnson.
Thank you for your patience, guys. Line item 3009, the other professional services. Last year, this current year, we budgeted at $193,000 and we've spent $15,000. And we budgeted for the same $193,000 next year.
That's all that work.
Yeah, this is,
So waterproofing.
so on the, whenever, I think the budget, the document you have in front of you was prepared in June. So if you look at the current, under 3009, under professional, we've spent 124,424 at this point, which is 81% of that particular line item.
Well, sir, are we saying we're reviewing a budget without the right information in it?
The line item on the copy you have is 3009, and yours is showing expenditures of 15,265, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir, that was year-to-date in June.
But the two big projects that we had coming up was the waterproofing of the outside of the whole building and also the rubber seals.
I don't need that explanation. I need to know why the numbers we're studying are not the right numbers. That's what I need to know.
I don't understand your question. You said they're not the right numbers, okay? You're saying they're not the right numbers because
The
we
question
don't...
is real simple. The numbers we were given showed that we budgeted $193,000, $500 for that line item, and that to date, we've spent $15,000.
Right.
Now, we're turning around and budgeting the same number again for next year. And I don't understand that. I mean, what are we going to do? And if the numbers on the sheet are wrong, why can't we get the correct numbers?
This was through June.
Let me give them a chance to reply.
So on your form at the top in the 2019 column, sir, it says through 6/30 of 19.
I got
Okay.
it. I got it. I'm not blaming you, sir.
Okay.
But I've been asked to review this budget and approve this budget with bad information. And I don't know what I can do but sit here and vote no, because I don't have a clue what's right.
I don't know what.
And it's not your fault. But I go look at these utilities, and if I've been looking at these numbers. These utility numbers aren't right. It's not your fault, but if the information's bad, I can't make a decision. That's real simple.
Yes, because the information you have is through the end of June. You probably, like I say, we probably need a current budget of what's happened up to this date.
Because I can't predict when you spend 6 months of this much money and you want 150% of it for 12 months, I can't make the math work. No way.
I can explain why we delayed the projects if that'll help.
Again, I'm not pointing a finger at you, sir. Somebody prepared this book for me to study with information that's no good.
I understand.
J.P. Pond?
Is the information not accurate up to the period of time where we had accurate accounts and numbers?
Well, I think the question is, if we've only spent $15,000 this year and we budgeted at $193,500 this year, and then we turned around and budgeted another $193,000 for next year, and we haven't spent it this year, and we're saying projects have been delayed and we'll spend that money for this year. So I don't know.
Well, the numbers that you were provided were given by the deadline that we were given.
Right.
And that's all I can explain, is we were given a deadline to give these numbers by this date, and at that time, those numbers were accurate. That is what we had spent.
Right.
Since that time, we have done other projects that have used up the funds that we had budgeted for.
Oh, okay, I understand. Most of that $93,500 has been used. All right.
Yes, our deadline was the 1st of August.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know that. We need, amended budgets. I guess when we ask for budgets from now on, we'll have to have amended budgets once that money has been spent, so people have an idea of the actual amount of money being spent. All right.
And we'll be glad to provide anything else that you request. This is what was requested of us that we supplied.
Well, I think what we need is we needed the expenditures brought up to date. Would be really helpful. And I don't know what the pleasure of the committee will be tonight, if they want to wait on those or if they just want that information brought up to date so they can look at it. All right, J.P. Pond, do you have a question or a comment or?
Oh, no, I couldn't understand how we could have had more accurate numbers when.
Well, he's saying because of from August to now, they've spent additional money, so therefore it's not reflected
They
in this
brought us
budget.
what we've requested, but now we want more. Okay, maybe we need to
Okay.
postpone.
J.P. Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion that we table this until we get the updated information.
Motion dies for a lack of a second. All right. Are there any more questions on the jail maintenance budget? Oh, J.P. Deakins.
Line item 4004, you guys have requested $100,000. And your justification here is to replace a rooftop heating and air unit. Is that one unit?
No, sir. That is a capital project that we're trying to start a replacement plan for all of the air conditioning units on the jail and the detention center. Most all of those units, with the exception of one that we replaced last year, are the same age as the jail, and they're starting to fail.
So this, to me, points to more background of, we just passed the Johnson Controls update.
Yes, sir.
The detention center opted out of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now we're going to replace them.
The reason we opted out of that was the proposal that was presented to us was budget neutral, and it was not budget neutral to us. After we attended all of these meetings, and everybody was in agreement that the sheriff's office would not see or recognize the savings that other county divisions would for a number of reasons. We had already started and completed all of our lighting upgrades to LED. We had already replaced the water valves to low output valves. We'd already replaced our boiler system to more efficient hot water heaters. So after the studies were done, the sheriff's office campus was not going to realize the savings that other county buildings that are aging were going to recognize. If we had became a part of that plan, this request would be for about $250,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
J.P. Johnson.
Oh, calm down, guys. When we get the right numbers, get me the right numbers for the utilities, because these don't compute either. If you spent 75 grand in the first 6 months, that would tell me you might spend a little more than 150 grand at the end of the year, and you're budgeting 175.
Yes, sir.
That 25 grand buys 8 million gallons of water.
Yes, sir. We received emails from SWEPCO. When we did our projections on these numbers, we had emails from our utility providers telling us what increases to expect for 2020. On the SWEPCO, they told us to expect a 16.9 to 19.9% increase. We budgeted for a 20% increase in an attempt to cover that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right. Do I hear a motion to pass tentatively, pass this budget?
So moved. Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. All those opposed, raise your hand. All right, it passes 6-3. Did you not vote, Mr. Johnson? Okay, he did, okay. All right. Are we jail operations done? Voting, community, right. Let me get my, all right. Communications, $499.
All right, on the communications budget, just a little bit of information about communications budget. That is not general fund money. The communications and facility fund is 100% funded by 25% of all the cost that we collect for serving civil papers. 25% of those fees go in to this fund. Also, any other fees that we receive, I think by ordinance, from the jail telephone system provider, that goes in. I haven't looked at it recently, but that fund gets anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 a month in income that comes in. And so we are allowed to spend that on communications items. So it's not general fund money. You can't use it, elsewhere. And we actually took the budget down because I just came to you just recently and moved some money just a week or so ago, and because we were going to get 2 new 911 stations in the communication center, and I moved some money because it was in the wrong category. That's a large project, but we don't have that project for 2020. So you notice that this budget has gone down from $386,000, which was approved in 2019, to $251,000. Now, you might say, what are some of the things you do out of the communication budget? We do not pay salaries or anything out of it, but we buy all the supplies that it takes to run the center, where all our communication specialists are. That's the 911 center. That includes cordless headsets. We even have document testing instruments that we test potential dispatchers, and we have to buy those from a recognized company to see if a person has an aptitude to be a 911 operator. Anything that we can tie to communications legally, then we try to purchase equipment so it doesn't have to come out of the general fund, like our mobile video recorders or in-car computers. We buy as many of those as we can because, you say, well, why? Well, those car computers communicate directly with our computer-aided dispatch system. Thereby, a dispatcher can send a call out. It communicates with the car, all the routing information, the type of call. It's a two-way communication. The modems that have to go in the back of the police car. So we try to use this for communication equipment. We have, $5,000 in there for Smith two-way for maintenance. We have our mobile modems internet connection. That's $16,000. That's that monthly fee that you have for data going back and forth. I have ACIC, which is Arkansas Crime Information Center. You've heard of NCIC. ACIC is the state counterpart. Well, guess what? Every time we check a license, to see, who does this car, is it registered to? Any type of check we do, there's a little fee for that, and we get a monthly fee. And right now, year to date, as of today, we've spent over $8,000 with ACIC. And then we have software support, and that's probably a big one. Our software for CAD, our computer-aided dispatch, is $36,000 a year for them to keep that updated, and that's so the dispatchers can log all the calls in and route the calls. It's a geo-based system. We also Microsoft Windows licenses, Sierra Wireless licenses. So that's what the brunt of the communications budget goes for. We use it as much as we can to take the pressure off of the general fund when we can.
Okay, I have a question. Is there any inmate charges in this communication when they're charged to make a phone call out? Is any of that money in this budget?
You'd have to ask the treasurer, but it's my understanding that we do get a payment from our telephone provider, and that comes to the county, and it by ordinance, I believe it goes into this fund. And that makes up, I don't know, probably, $15,000 or $20,000 a month. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Bobby Hill could answer that question.
$250,000 a year from phone committed.
From what?
Phone commissions.
Phone commissions from inmates making phone calls out to their families?
That's what I assume.
So that's $250,000 a year. All right. Are there any other questions? J.P. Lemming?
The other professional services involved in this, what would that be?
That's Smith two-way. It's charges for them to repair radios. I know we've spent.
Is that a contract per year, or is that?
No, that's on a per item basis. And we've spent, as of this year, we've spent $1,972 out of the $10,000 that we budgeted. We don't always, try to budget this fund exactly, because this money does not go anywhere. If we don't spend it, it stays in the fund, and it's there to rebudget. It doesn't go to the general fund or anything like that. So,
Line item 2002, small equipment. I mean, what, is that kind of a radio type equipment, or?
any kind of equipment that fails inside the dispatch center, or that we can tie it to communications. I looked so far I ran this report today because I just wanted to see where we were, and we had spent $1,200 out of the $10,000 that we budgeted, and a lot of that was for cordless headsets that the dispatch personnel wear, because we assign them a headset, and those are used daily. Things fail, you have to replace things.
Who do you have your internet service with, connection? Line item 3023.
That's with Verizon and AT&T.
AT&T and Verizon?
Uh-huh.
That's your phone carriers?
Yeah, line item 3023.
So I guess line item 3022 just purchases your phones and radios.
That's for cell phone charges. The other one is for internet connection charges for the modems that are in the back of the police cars, police units that talks to dispatch.
Okay, line item 3090, it says dues and memberships.
That is our ACIC charges, Arkansas Crime Information Center. We have spent so far almost $9,000 to ACIC.
But you've got
Okay, thank you.
budgeted. Are there any other questions? Okay, JP, Yanez.
Hi. Do you have an update on line item 2009?
2009, computer IT equipment. We have spent $68,466. That was for in-car computers and car modems, docking stations. We show, we budgeted $75,000, and we show we have a balance of $1,956. We've expended 97% of that line item.
Okay, and then what's the difference between line item 4009?
4009 are items that cost over $5,000. They're a fixed asset, and that is the money that we moved. I don't think it's reflected in here yet, because I don't know if the judge has done his order, but we moved that money. That's the money in last year's budget that I put a bunch in there for those 2 stations in dispatch, the 911 stations, and I even said it then in my narrative, because I went back and looked, that it might not be, when it comes to actual purchase, in the right item, the line item. And so I went before you just a couple of weeks ago and asked to move that down to lease expense. And so we moved, it's just not reflected in here yet. It takes a little while for all of that to get reflected in the county paperwork.
Have we spent any of that?
I don't think so. Not yet, but it's reserved.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Yes.
All right, JP Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we pass the communications budget as presented.
All those, okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passed. Budget's passed. Communication budget passed. All right. What,
Boating safety,
yeah, which boating safety is 4104.
again, this is a fund, this is not general fund money. The money that comes into this, that funds this, is my understanding from boat registrations and possibly boat insurance. A small amount comes with it. Bobby Hill could clarify that. It's not a great big budget, but we do have 2 boats at the sheriff's office, and that's what we use for water rescue and water. It's usually not rescue, it's usually recovery operations. Right. We have a scuba diving team that have wetsuits, dry suits. We have a pontoon boat that we use as a base of operations when we go out and have one of these operations. And we also have a V-bottom boat that we can go about the lake. We just recently had to use that just a couple of weeks ago. We were up at near War Eagle because the I believe it was the electric company was stringing new lines across the lake, from one side to the other, and they needed police assistance out there to make sure somebody didn't come along and get tangled up in their equipment and so forth. So we were
Okay,
we were
out
out
on the
there.
water. Okay, do I hear a motion to pass this vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, now we're ready for drug state.
Drug enforcement state. This money is also, again, is not general fund money. This is the money that goes into this fund comes from drug forfeitures in drug cases. And I can tell you, it does not increase very much. Mr. Hill can tell you that it does not increase very much. There's not a lot of forfeitures that come in, but I will tell you that this year, now we can buy, there's certain rules, but we can buy different things, and we use it to offset expenditures and pressure to the general fund. This year, in small equipment in 2002, we spent $13,000, and we bought 9 defibrillators. The ones like you see out in the hall, because we didn't have any. And we put 7 of them out in cars, and we put 2 fixed ones. Let's
Do
see.
I hear a motion to pass the state drug enforcement fund? Is there a second? All right. Question.
Right now.
JP Lemming has suggested that perhaps you should put one of the defibrillators in this room.
What did she say?
All right. Okay.
Well,
We have
am I that
motion
bad?
and a second. All those in favor of passing the drug enforcement state fund, raise your hand. Did you have a question, J.P. Lemming? You want to pass it or move it on? All right, now we have drug enforcement federal funds.
Okay, the federal is just almost like the state, except these are federal forfeitures. That money is sent to the county. It has to be held in a separate fund. We have things that govern what we can spend it for, but we spend a lot of it on our canine program. For our police canines, we buy the dog food, all the dog supplies. We also bought a drone earlier this year. In fact, I've just informed there's been possibly a plane crash just in the last few moments, and they're calling for our drone to go out because we have thermal imaging on our drone. So we may be taking our drone out in a little bit to help with that. We bought an iPad to help the drone operations. We had some vet bills, and we bought some software for our fire marshal that wasn't in our regular budget that he needed.
Are there any questions? Do I hear? Okay, we got a motion to pass in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
Now,
All right.
in closing, if I may, I know it's been a long night, and I would hope that we will get invited back to talk about the STEP plan.
You will.
Because we have a lot of information about that. The main information I want to tell you is that we're talking about less than 86, 90 personnel?
90 personnel.
90 personnel that it affects in the sheriff's office, and the amount of...
90 or 9?
90.
90.
90. And
All right.
the overall increase, if we were to implement it, and I hope you do, is about $150,000, and it amounts to a 3.36% increase. Because I know that you were talking with the Mr. Johansson here recently, and he was recommending an amount. I know that's all in flux, but he had recommended 4% for the rest of the county. Ours would equal 3.36 for those people on the STEP plan. We look forward to being able to come back and discuss how this plan works and why it's a good thing and why it needs to continue. Thank you.
Bring some money. All right. No one thought that was funny. Sorry. Is there anything else to come of? Oh, public comments. We have any public comments tonight?
I would move we adjourn.
All right, do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.